mother, my brother. If you'll hold this with me, that might help me. Adolphe, Henri, and Sabine. These are both of my grandmothers. This is my grandmother with my sister. And this is my two brothers, my sister, and that's me, the little one. That's me. And her name is Rachel. This is a picture of my two brothers while I imagine that's probably a picture when they came from Warsaw. It looks like a school picture to me. This is a picture of my mother in the country. This is a picture of my father, my mother, my mother's brother, my maternal grandmothers, my two brothers, and my sister. And this is with my paternal grandmother. Anyway, it's going to be a little more difficult since we can't show the pictures, but I will try to be as explicit as I can. They arrived in France, and my father couldn't work because he was an immigrant. But he did get a job working in a barber shop. The only day he was off was Sunday. My mother was not well, and guess what happened? They arrived in 1932, and lo and behold, in 1933, I arrived. All I can tell you as a little girl, I can only remember lots of love, lots of fun. We used to get together on Saturday night, all my aunts, my uncles, and my cousins, and we used to have cake, ice cream, cookies, and so forth and so on. And they used to sing in 3 different languages. They sang in French, they sang in Yiddish, and they sang in Polish. It was really so exciting. I just loved everything. I looked so forward to my family on Saturday night. I was sitting on the buffet one Sunday morning. My father was cutting my hair. And I heard him say to my mother, it's the beginning of June. Why it registered at the age of 7, and we'll never know, but it did. That was the beginning of June for me. That was the day when Germany invaded Poland. As far as we were concerned, basically, my life didn't change. We used to went to school, we used to get together on Saturday night. Everything was just very much the same. 1 year later, to show you, I hope I can find this. Excuse me, I'm sorry that because of the lack of PowerPoint makes it more difficult. I apologize. I don't have it. 1 year later, June 23rd, 1940, I heard of a parade. Which kid doesn't like a parade? So I ran downstairs and waited myself in front of everybody so I could see this wonderful parade. And when I saw it, I became so frightened. In the precision in which they walked, they were on their horses, motorcycles, and cars, and the expression on their face was like a robot. I was so frightened. I went upstairs and I started to cry and said, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. My family said, who hurt you? What happened? Did you fall down? I said, no, I'm afraid. All I kept saying is, I'm afraid. That was the day that the French welcomed the Germans into Paris. For Hitler to go down the Champs-Élysées, which is the main block in Paris, must have been such a thrill because of the Versailles Treaty. Germany lost World War I. And they had to pay restitution to many countries because of the ravage that they had done in World War I. Now, for Hitler to be able to go through l'Arc de Triomphe on les Champs-Élysées must have been so ecstatic for him because he nullified the Versailles Treaty, and now he was able to ravage everything that he wanted to from every country that he conquered. Life for me was pretty much the same after that. Went back to school, got together on Saturday night. I do want to say that my father did not serve in the Polish army, but he did serve in the French army. A year and a half later, August 1941, a beautiful, beautiful day. Let me tell you about our building. Our building had 2 black double doors, And it was shaped in a U, the courtyard. And we lived in building number A, and it went A, B, C, D, and so forth and so on. There was a lot of commotion in the yard. Unfortunately, I'm jumping ahead because I don't have the power plant. What I should have told you is I can show you one picture of my family, which, with me, thank you. This is my father, this is my mother, this is my brother Adolphe, this is my brother Henri, and my sister Sabine, and this is me, right here. And the thing about the two dresses that my sister and I are sharing, my mother used to dress us alike, and it makes me so happy when I think that we would share that together. So when I look at the pictures, even though I did not remember it at the time, it's only when I look at the pictures that I realize that we shared that together, and it makes me so happy because I adored her. In France, I was jumping the gun, so I'm regressing. You'll have to forgive me if I go back and forth. In France, whether you, I lost something. What did I lose? A little. Whether you're rich or poor, in the month of August, everybody goes away. They go away to the country, and that's where that picture was taken. Anyway, going back to my courtyard, the SS and the French police is in the courtyard. With that, Monsieur Martin, who lived across the way from us, came knocking at the door and said, Monsieur Goldman, please come with me. They're picking up the Jews and taking them to a labor camp. My father did not question it. He picked up a suitcase and started to walk towards Monsieur Martin's building when Monsieur Maurice in building number C said to the police and to the SS, he's trying to go away. They picked him up right there in the yard. The police came looking for my two brothers, Adolphe and Henri. I told them we had no running water. We had these huge bathtubs. It was porcelain or plastic, I don't know what it was made of. My mother hid my two brothers under the bed. And when the policeman came, I'm sure he must have seen them, but decided not to see them. On that day, my father was taken away, my Aunt Rose's husband was taken away, and he was actually taken away by mistake. Why do I say that? Because Pétain, who was then the Prime Minister of France, made a deal with Hitler that he could pick up all the Polish Jews, the Russian Jews, the German Jews, the Lithuanians, and so forth and so on, but he was to leave the French Jews alone. My Aunt Rose's husband, my Aunt Salomon, was born in a place called Nancy, which was a suburb of Paris, about 100 kilometers outside of Paris. As I mentioned before, we were poor. In those days, only rich people had telephones, only rich people had cars. So we all lived within a walking distance because, as I mentioned before, we were a very close family. So my uncle heard what was going on. He started walking towards our house. And when he walked towards our house, he was stopped in the street and I said, where are you going? And he says, I'm going to visit my family. What's your name? Salomon. Yokovich. Drop your pants. And because he was circumcised, he too was taken on that day. So on that day, my father, my Aunt Salomon, his brother Leo, were taken to a place called Nancy, which is where my uncle was born. I have a letter from my uncle over here. It's written, I did see it before when I was looking at the book. There it is over here. While we're there, we'll leave this open, if you don't mind reading. And he writes to his wife, dear wife, I received your letter and I'm very happy to hear from you. And he mentions my father because they're in the same camp, that my father received a letter from his wife and he received a package of food and that which they needed very badly. And he's asking for He's asking for shaving cream, he's asking for soap, for laundry, for bathing, and he's asking for a comb, he's asking for a razor, and he's asking for candy, he's asking for handkerchiefs, he's asking for a little knife, but most of all, he's asking for cigarettes. I don't know how my mother or my aunt were able to get the knife he put down for me. And I don't know how they got him out of the camp. He got very, very sick. Something with their stomach. I don't know exactly what happened. But they were taken to l'Hôpital, which was a Catholic hospital on the left bank of Paris. They had major surgery there and did very, very well. The good thing about it is that we were allowed to see them 3 hours a week. So 1 hour, my mother would go by herself, another time she would take my 2 brothers, another time she would take my sister and I. Now Anita came out. Only the French Jews could stay at that hospital. So my father was moved to the left bank of Paris to the Rothschild Hospital. He developed some kind of, I don't know, something. I went to see him with my mother and my sister on the 28th of December. I was so excited. He was coming home January 1st. As far as I was concerned, we were going to have our Saturday night gatherings again, and everything would be just the way it was. Because I missed it. I was a little girl. I wanted it back. On the 30th, my mother went to see him. He told her that at 10 o'clock in the morning, he had been injected with something, and he died in her lungs at 2 o'clock. Tuesday, December 30th, 1941. My uncle, who was at l'Hôpital told my Aunt Rose that at 10 o'clock he had been injected with something, became very sick, and he died in her lungs. Tuesday, December 30th, 1941, at 2 p.m. We couldn't figure out how one knew that the other one had died. We found out after many hours that both of them had died. They were murdered. They were the first Jews to be experimented upon by the Germans. They were injected with gas. I found out some years later. I don't have to tell you, there was no more getting together on Saturday nights because the men weren't there anymore. And I found out not too long ago that my mother's 2 brothers were actually taken 2 months before my father was taken away. So that's why when they came out, when Monsieur Martin came to help him, he didn't stop for 1 moment and started to go towards his house. Life was terrible. It was very sad. We were poor. We were very poor. 4 children in a 2-room apartment. We used to have these folding beds. We'd go to sleep during the day. We had a small kitchen and we did have a toilet, but no running water. The living room and dining room converted into the bedroom at night. It was 1 room. My mother and father had the bedroom, and my sisters and my brother we slept in what was these folding beds. And it was really, there was a lot of love actually with it, I have to tell you. I loved being with my sister anyway, so there was a lot of love being close like that together. Anyway, school was coming to an end, and my mother said to me, Rachel, I'm going to send you to the country. I was so happy. I wanted to be happy again. I wanted to have the singing and everything that I had before. I missed it. Anyway, the night before I was supposed to leave, my mother said to me, Rachel, I'm going to give you a new name. You're not allowed to tell anyone that you're Jewish. I would have lied. I would have been punished. My new name was Christine, and I was going away with my friend Sistine to this farm in the country. The best part of it all, Sabine was supposed to join me. But Sabine's birthday was July the 15th. I was leaving on the 13th. And my Aunt Rose promised her a handbag. Sabine would not leave unless she received a handbag. So she was going to join me on July the 18th. So I left on the 13th with my friend Cecile to the country. I was there for a day and a half, and it was wonderful. It was exactly what I wanted it to be. The kids were there singing and playing and everything. It was great. Oh, now I'm looking at the grave, and I forgot about the grave. See, I'm sorry, I keep jumping. I apologize. This is where my father is buried. They had 1,500 people at their funeral. We did not know 1,500 people. They were the first Jews to die under the German occupation. This is their grave, and their name is right in here. My uncle and my father are buried right there. Now going back to the country. Some kids came up and they started to talk about this big raid that they're going to have, that they're picking up the Jews. I became very frightened. I started to cry. I went to bed and covered my head with a blanket, and I went to sleep. Went for a couple of days. On the 18th of July, I went to the bus to pick up Sabine. Instead, Cecile's mother got off the bus. I said, "Where is Sabine?" She said she went shopping. I said, "Shopping?" I said, "In our family, nobody goes shopping when we're supposed to do something. What happened?" Anyway, she kept telling me all kinds of stories, and we started to walk towards the farm. What seemed like an eternity. I ran in and I said, "If you don't tell me what happened to my family, I'm going to run away to Paris." She told me that on the 16th of July, they picked up my mother, my two brothers, and my sister. Now I was very angry at my mother. Why did she not keep me with her? Why did she send me away? Didn't she love me? My mother loved me very much. It must have been such a difficult thing to send her child away, not knowing whether or not she was going to see me again. What was going to happen to me? I was on an assumed name, Christine, 9 years old, in this farm. Who's going to take care of me? A few weeks later, I got a letter from my aunt, and she said that she was in hiding with my cousin Olette, and as soon as it would be safe, she would take me back to Paris. Now, a new edict came out. Anyone hiding a Jewish child, if you bring them before to the police, they will give you 300 francs. This woman, whose name I do not remember, God bless her soul every time I tell my story, sent a letter to my aunt asking permission as to whether or not she should report me to the police. My aunt sent her the 300 francs and told her not to. So as a result, I was saved twice. Once by my mother, and once by this wonderful farmer, whose name I do not remember, but bless her soul, every time I tell my story. Things quieted down, so my aunt brought me back to Paris. The first thing I wanted to do was to go to my house. That was the day they were looting our apartment. I asked permission. Oh, by the way, my sister was supposed to bring my doll. And I asked Madame Thiel about the doll, and she said, she didn't give me anything. She didn't know about the doll that my sister was supposed to bring. So anyway, I asked permission as to whether or not I should go up to the apartment, and they said no. But Madame Thiel was from Alsace-Lorraine, and she spoke German. She says, "You're going to burn the pictures anyway. Why don't you let her go upstairs and get the pictures?" So at the age of 9, I had the presence to get the pictures of my family. I am one of very few child survivors that has pictures of her family. Within the pictures, there was a pair of earrings and a bracelet that belonged to my mother. There was a duvet on their bed. They had a high window. My aunt threw it over the high window, which led in the garage, and made me 2 pillows when my husband and I got married. I did not take my doll, and I walked out of my house. That was the last time I was there. Now I went to live with my aunt. My aunt died. Everything is relative. She had cold running water, and she had a radio, so to my standard, she was rich. She was not rich, but to my standard, she was rich. Anita came out now. Any child over the age of 6 had to wear this doll on the left side, and it had to be sewn in a very special place, and it had to be exactly by centimeters and millimeters on your outer clothes. And it said Jew. In French, it's Juif, J-U-I-F. What did that mean? It meant, number one, that I was subhuman, that we were subhuman. I was not the only one. We were subhuman. We were vermin. We were just not people. We didn't exist. It meant that we had a curfew of 8 o'clock at night. It meant that we could only do grocery shopping between the hours of 3 and 4. It meant that sometimes I was allowed to go to school, sometimes I was not allowed to go to school. It meant that sometimes my aunt would go to work, sometimes she could not. And it meant that we had absolutely nothing. We were not allowed to go, to a movie. They took away all amenities, absolutely everything. My little cousin, who was 3 and a half, had a tricycle, and they took that away because she was a menace to society with that tricycle. My aunt's radio, of course, she had to turn in the radio. There was no question about that, because she didn't want to have anything like that. It meant that they kept taking people, and we didn't know where they were taking them. But one day, there was a knock at the door. It was a German soldier in civilian clothes who fell in love with my sister Sabine, who had just turned 15 years old. When they were taken on July the 16th, they were taken to a place, a convention hall called Val d'Hiver, which housed 17,000 people, from infants to elderly people. In those days, there was no air conditioning. There were 6 bathrooms. 3 bathrooms faced the window, so they closed it up. So in reality, they had, 3 bathrooms faced the street, I beg your pardon. So in reality, they only had 3 bathrooms for 17,000 people plus. There was no water, no anything. From there, they were there for 5.5 days. Can you imagine the situation? Just imagine yourself for 1 second when you have to go to the bathroom and you have 10 toilets in front of you, and you're in a hurry, and you say, why don't they hurry up? Can you imagine 17,000 people with 3 bathrooms? Well, what happened to them, after they were taken, they were put on cattle cars and sent to a camp called Pinckneyville, which is where this German soldier found Sabine. He brought out 3 letters. My aunt, unfortunately, burned the letters. But the first one is imprinted in my brain. He writes of how they shaped my mother's beautiful black hair, Adele's beautiful blonde hair, Henri's and hers. They were hungry, she was sick, and she wanted out. He wanted to marry her. As I mentioned, she had just turned 15. My aunt gave him permission. By the time he went back, she was on a convoy to Auschwitz. And it was the last time I heard from my family. They kept taking these people. Where were they taking them? Nobody knew. Nobody knew. My aunt heard about a raid, so we went in a cellar, not a basement. A basement is quite different than a cellar. A cellar is pitch black. We had rats running around us for 5.5 days. To this day, I am terrified of mice. If I see a mouse, I go ballistic. I was afraid of the dark till I was 15. I was afraid of dogs till I was 40. And even sometimes today, I'm still a little leery when I see a dog. Because the Germans used to walk with the German shepherds, and their teeth, they're ready to attack. You see my hand, the way it goes up? That's just the way their teeth were, ready to attack. I went to bed till I was 13 and a half. I used to go to sleep with cotton in my ears. They kept taking away. Where were they taking them? We didn't know. My aunt was sick, so I went online, and it was December. It was very cold. My hand and my feet used to crack open for malnutrition. and bleed. I was waiting online, and this woman, and as I mentioned before, you could only shop between the hours of 3 and 4. This woman brought herself in front of me, so I gingerly tapped her and I said, "Excuse me, madam, I've been waiting online." And she looked at my star and she said, "You filthy little Jew, you have the audacity to tell me that I haven't been waiting online. I'm going to report you to the Germans. I'm going to call them over and they're going to take you away." I started pleading, begging, and so forth and so on. I was cracking on my knees. By the time it was my turn, my aunt was sick with pleurisy. A fresh piece of fruit, an apple, would have been the best thing for her, but I couldn't get it. I cried and cried all the way home and promised myself when the war would be over, I'd start speaking. But I really didn't start speaking till about 20 years ago. I was in a convent and was almost baptized and had my first communion. I was there for a year and a half. All I remember is green apples and a spiral staircase. And I remember saying my prayers 5 times a day. After that, I went back to live with my aunt. I kept changing my identity. When I was in hiding, my name was Christine. When I was with my aunt, my name was Rachel. So I kept changing constantly. I kept thinking, my mother, I was pretty sure she was not well. Something could happen to my mother, but my brothers were strong. I'm sure that they would be okay. And my sister, she was so beautiful. Who would want to hurt somebody who was so beautiful, not only outside, but inside? Why would anybody want to hurt Sabine? She was so lovely. I also forgot to mention something. When my father died, my 2 brothers and my cousins and a friend of theirs went and were fighting on the underground. It's called the Resistance. They started, a lot of people say that the Jews went without fighting. That is a myth. They did go and fight. As a matter of fact, this is a picture of my brother Adolphe over here with my cousin Hélène and Jean Berger. And this is when they were fighting on the ground. I don't know who these people are. And I'm so proud of them that they stood up against the Germans. This is in 1942, very early on. Things were so bad, so bad. The French, with the Germans, worked to get rid not only of the Jews, but they wanted to get rid of the Gypsies. The Germans killed 23 million people, Jehovah's Witnesses, 6 million Jews, 1.5 million were children. They killed 3 million Russians. They killed the French that were in the French police in the Resistance struggle. They killed for the sake of killing and ravaged countries and took away. One day, June 7th, 1944, the beginning of the end. Till the very last day, they were taking the Jews and taking them to concentration camps. Till the very, very last day. My aunt got very upset. And she was very worried right now because most of the Poles, most of the Russians, most of the Lithuanians and so forth and so on had been taken away. What was left was we need the French Jews. By the way, the school that I went to was a girls' school. 1,259 girls were murdered. From the age of kindergarten to 6th grade, 1,259 girls were murdered. That's the school that I went to. She was very, very nervous. She heard about this orphanage. And she decided to send us to this orphanage. And I don't know if I can show the pictures over here. Oh, here it is. This is the orphanage that I was in. There you are. This is me over here dancing. And over here. So these are the orphanage pictures. It's too bad that we're not able to see it on the PowerPoint. I really apologize. Anyway, One day, we were putting on a play. One day, this soldier was passing by, an American soldier, because this was in 1945 already, very close to the end of the war. And he heard children playing, and he came in and asked what about the children, and he found out that we were all children whose parents had been what they call déportés, which means they were sent away. Déporté means to send away. Didn't mean they were sent to a camp, they were just sent away. And he found out that we were those children, and he asked permission as to whether or not he could bring some of the soldiers from the base. We all had lice because we all had malnutrition. We were all very thin. So he brought, the next day, he brought about 300 soldiers who brought out. And they brought chocolate and oranges and so forth and so on, and grapefruits. We knew how to eat oranges, but we didn't know how to eat grapefruits. So we had grapefruits with the skin, and we didn't like it very much, I have to tell you. It was very bitter. So we put on this play for them, and they washed our hair, so we didn't have lice anymore. They put on a playground, they built a playground for us, and they had PWs, the Germans PWs. Whatever they built, we tore down. We used to throw stones at them because we were so angry at them for what they had done to us. Now, of those 60 children, 3 parents came back. Not 3 sets of parents, but 3 parents came back. There were 3 soldiers that wanted to bring me to the United States, and Harry was the first one that I had met, and there it is, and that's me over here, and that's me with Raymond and Harry. The problem is that he molested me. He molested me until he came to the United States, and he brought me to his house, and his wife and daughter, and even when his wife was there, I lived there for 9 months, and he molested me. Finally, his wife threw me out. She should have thrown me out the first day it happened. I was in 5 different foster homes until I married my husband. I met my husband in the 4th foster home that I was in. He was a very nice gentleman, came from a very nice family. He had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were wonderful people. I absolutely adored my mother-in-law and father-in-law. And this is where I got married. And I had 2 children. My son Neil, who is a lawyer and prosecutor. My daughter-in-law Marcy, who is a lawyer as well. And my son Mark, who is also a lawyer. He was a graduate of Princeton and Yale. He was gay, and he died of AIDS. So I've had a lot of heartbreak in that family. He was a wonderful, wonderful young man. And I'll show you a picture, I hope it's in here, of our family. Probably not, because it's on the screen. It doesn't show the picture. No, I don't have a picture of my family, I'm sorry. Anyway, I lost 93 people in the war. I did not know 93 people, but I lost 93 people in the war. I am now a Holocaust survivor. I'm 83 and a half years old. As I mentioned before, I tell my story. I don't know how much longer I will be able to continue to tell my story about what happened to me and to my family. For some reason, God saved my life. Maybe for me to stand in front of you and tell you my story. I know a lot of people will tell you that the Holocaust never happened, but it did. Now, I am looking at this beautiful sister over here from Nigeria. Had she been in France, she too would have been taken because she is of black origin. And Hitler only wanted blonde and blue eyes civilization. This is what he was striving for. He did a lot. He will go in history, unfortunately, because of what he did. Can you imagine killing 23 million people just because you don't agree with them? That's basically what happened. I have here, I was not in a concentration camp, but I did visit 6 camps. One of which I was telling your principal, Miss Goldman, that Ladonic is probably the worst one that I've ever seen. It's about 80% intact. When you go to Auschwitz, it says Arbeit macht frei, which means work makes you free. What they used to do is, they used to have people playing the violin when they were getting out of the cattle car, because they didn't want people to be frightened. Because they would say, if you were between the age of 16 and 40, and you were tall, in fairly good condition, then let's say you would go to the right, that meant that you would go to work. But if you were below the age of 16 and over 40, and you were not in such good condition, most likely, you would go to the left. That means that you would go to, can I mention? Go to the gas chambers, where they would drop pellets into the gas chambers and tell you they're taking showers. And they would tell you to get undressed and to buckle your clothes, to get your shoes together. So when you came out, you would be sure to find it. It was a sham all the way through, but they did that. And then they would have people going through the body cavities to see if there was gold or diamonds or money or whatever there was to go through. And with that, I want to read you something, because as you know, I speak to a lot of schools, and this is from a school in Wydown, and the student is in the 7th grade. And this is what he wrote. This is from the perspective of an Auschwitz Southern Commando. That's the ones that used to have to go through the clothes and help the people go into the gas chambers. Am I responsible? I lead friends into the chambers. I bring neighbors into camp. I sort through victims' belongings. Am I responsible? I never meant to be a bringer of death, yet here I am aiding the Nazis in hope of a crumb of bread and another breath of life. Am I responsible? I was forced to come here, and when I was faced with this whirling mist, I knew I was staring into the eyes of death. So I cracked. I told them I would do what they wanted. I said I would work, and I followed their orders. Am I responsible? I told them I like to think it is not my fault, but when I lock the door, I know the fog is enveloping innocent lives. Because of me, am I responsible? But I do not want to be. I want to save them. I want to unlock the door, but all I do is cover my ears to block out the screams. This is from a 7th grade student in Wydown that wrote this. I just could not believe the sensitivity of this young person. It's a young woman that wrote it. She is about your age, 13, 14. And I thought it was unbelievable. Anyway, here I am, and I tell you the story, and as I don't know if I mentioned it before, because sometimes my memory is not as good as it should be. People will tell you that the Holocaust never happened. Did I mention that before? Okay, then I don't have to repeat it. I want to thank you for listening to me. I hope you have some questions, because it's important for you to ask questions, and I hope I can answer them. And I want to thank you for listening and Brittany for bringing me to St. Bruno. Thank you very much. And to your faculty, to your mother-in-law, and to the press, and to the TV station. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes. Could you tell me your name so I can address you properly?